Well, welcome. We are starting chapter 2 in the Gospel of John. If you're just joining us, we're glad to have you along. We're taking a very methodical and slow look through the Gospel, trying to dig a little bit deeper into some of the stuff that's going on. And one of the things to pay attention to is that John, like Jesus, is very deliberate in how he sets up his ministry, in this case his gospel. And so we start chapter 2, and it starts out with on the third day. Now I'm going to read this whole part of this, and then we'll get on here. But it says, on the third day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee, and Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any more wine." "What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour has not yet come." "Do whatever he tells you," his mother told the servants. Now 6 stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus told them. Then he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief servant." And they did. When the chief servant tasted the water after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and he told him, "Everybody sets out the fine wine first, then, after people have drunk freely, the inferior. But you have kept the finest wine until now." Jesus performed this first sign in Cana of Galilee. His disciples, it displayed his glory for his disciples, and they believed in him. After this, they went down to Capernaum together with his mother and brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there only a few days. So there's a lot going on in these 12 verses. So we're going to unpack them here. So it starts out on the third day. As I said, John is being very deliberate in his gospel. On the first day, Jesus comes out of the wilderness and meets a couple of his disciples. On the second day, he meets a couple more. And now on the third day, he goes to a wedding. Now you think about that. Now he was in the wilderness for 40 days. They didn't have mail back then, so he was the oldest born of his family, so we have to assume he came out of the wilderness and went to his mother, and she was going to a wedding, and he got invited, and his disciples got invited, so we can assume there's some conversation going on in the first 2 days about this big wedding that's coming up. And so on the third day, Jesus and his disciples go to this wedding. And it's in Cana. And it's interesting, Jesus doesn't start his ministry in Jerusalem, right? He starts it out in the wilderness. And Cana, as we see in Joshua 19:28, is the home of the tribe of Asher. And in Genesis 49:20, I do believe it is, they say that the tribe of Asher are the dainties, or the tribe God is going to provide for them. And here we see God does provide for them rather well. We pay attention to some things that aren't being said, and it's always important to pay attention to what's not being said. And so, first of all, where's Dad? Where's Joe? Jesus' stepdad, right? Joseph is not mentioned, so it's safe to assume that by this time Joe must have passed on. And we see that Jesus is there with his brothers, it tells us, and his mother, and his disciples. And it's interesting to note also that we're in Cana. This is a poor section. And we know that Mary was poor because in Luke, when she had to make the offering for Jesus, she makes the offering of 2 turtle doves, which is the offering that the poor people would make as their sacrifice. So we have to assume that this wedding taking place out here in the country, these aren't really rich people, and they run out of wine, which is socially really bad. Weddings would go on for days, and celebrations would go on for days, and it was expected that the host would provide food and drink for everybody, and you really didn't want to drink a lot of the water out there, so wine was the main staple of drink, and they run out of wine. And somehow Mary knows this, but other people at the wedding don't. So we have to, again, it's safe to assume that she must be friends or somehow related to the family, and they've come to her and said, we're in trouble. We are out of wine. And Mary goes to Jesus and says, we got a problem. And Jesus' reaction may seem harsh to us, but in the context of the day, it was pretty standard. What does this have to do with me? It's and Jesus says, it's not my time yet. And she just said, well, do whatever he tells you. And so Jesus, being obedient to his parents, to his mother, there are 6 stone water jars, it says there. So we have to, again, it's not hard to assume that they didn't make this conversation out in public in front of everybody. They went to where it was kind of private. So you go to the area where they've got the 6 jars stored, maybe in the back of the kitchen or somewhere in a shed or something. And she tells Jesus the dilemma, and there's those 6 jars there, and those 6 jars represent 6 as a number in Jewish literature of imperfection. And we have to understand too that purification washing, the rules for purification washing were very deliberate. You deliberately did this ceremony, you did this hand, and then you did it this way, and then this way, and the water itself didn't have to be clean. Again, it was a ceremonial washing. But Jesus sees these water things for purification, and they've been used, obviously, so they're not full. He tells the servants, fill them up to the brim. And notice the servants are very obedient, just like we're supposed to be. Right? Be obedient to what you're told to do, and they do exactly as Jesus says. And he turns the water into wine. No fanfare, right? There's no laying of hands on the water. There's no abracadabra. There's no, casting forth of anything, right? He just, somehow the water just miraculously turns into wine. And this shows us that Jesus, as God, is the God of nature. His first miracle, right? He performs a miracle of nature, turning water into wine. And that's really fascinating, and I'm probably messing up poor Amy here because I think I've skipped a slide. I slipped us. Oh my goodness, stop! Start over! All right, we'll go back. Let's make it easy on you. Okay, sorry about that. I forget I had these slides behind me. It's just like playing music. I used to love playing in a band, right? If you messed up the verses, nobody knew, or you did verses out of order, who cares, But now it's expected, especially in Christian music, it's expected that you have the words on the screen, and man, if you mess things up, if people come to me and go, you said the, but the slide says but, you need to fix that. It's like, you're lucky I'm saying I'm in the right song. So, but anyway, I digress. So there were 4 main divisions. Take another bunny trail here, sorry about that. I don't know if division's the right word, sects maybe, or groupings. So you had the Sadducees in the time of Jesus, and these were the Jewish leaders. They didn't believe in the resurrection. So obviously Jesus was not a Sadducee, since he was the resurrection. It's also interesting to note that after the temple fell in 70 AD, they ceased to exist anymore as a party. The whole group of Sadducees who only believed in the first 5 books of the Bible, didn't believe in angels or demons or the resurrection or any of that stuff. They ceased to exist. Then there were the Zealots, and these were militants. Obviously Jesus wasn't one of them. Then there were the Essenes, and these were the separatists. They had gone out into the wilderness and had formed their own little communities where we get the Dead Sea Scrolls from. And obviously Jesus wasn't one of them. But there were the Pharisees, and Jesus spends a lot of time correcting the Pharisees from their errors. And I bring this up because this miracle says a few things about the Sadducees, as we'll see. But again, we talked about pay attention to what isn't said, right? Jesus spent a lot of time in the Gospels correcting false teaching. Whenever the Pharisees, or one of the groups, mainly the Pharisees, were wrong, although he did correct the Sadducees on their outlook, he corrected them. So when Jesus doesn't say something about what the Jews believed, maybe he believed, right? They were correct in that. For instance, the Pharisees believed that when you died, you went to the bosom of Abraham, and if you weren't Jewish, you went to Sheol or Hades, right? And Jesus talks about this with Lazarus and the rich man, right? So it's interesting to see how Jesus corrects things. And I say this because there are times when people, well, Jesus never mentioned that in the Bible, so, you know, must be he didn't have a problem with it. Maybe he didn't mention it because the opinion of the day and the way they interpreted it wasn't correct. So something to keep in the back of your mind. As Jesus moves along as the God of nature here, doing his first miracle here in the beginning of the Gospel of John. So turning water into wine. Now there were several ways Jesus could have played this, right? He could have said, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, the hosts are out of wine, which is a good thing because, you know, drunkenness is a sin and we shouldn't be drinking wine. So I've got some water here. You're just going to love this. Great water. So, you know, come on now, let's be good here and not drink any wine anymore. He doesn't say that. Or he could have said, hey, everybody, you guys drank a lot. Or whatever. Problem with the wine. Something happened to the wine. We don't have any more wine. Would you all mind chipping in a little bit, and we'll do a beer run. We'll do a wine run. He doesn't say that either, right? He just very quietly looks around, sees the water jugs, turns them into wine. And why? So Jesus turns water into wine. Very symbolic. Moses in Exodus did what with the wine? With the water? What did Moses turn the water into?
Blood.
Blood. Moses represents the law. Right? Moses is the lawgiver coming down from the mountain. And nobody is saved by the law because no one can keep the law. So the law kind of is a curse, right? So the law turns water into blood. Jesus, the gospel, turns water into wine. It's an interesting thing to think about. And also we look in Isaiah 55, which is the end of a very long poem, chapter 40 through 55, and it says, come and buy wine. We can go to Isaiah 55 here, Isaiah 55, and it says, come everyone who is thirsty, come to the waters, and you without money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why do you spend money on what is not food, and your wages on what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and you will enjoy the choicest of foods. Pay attention and come to me. Listen so that you will live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. The promise is assured to David, since I have made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and commander for the people. So you will summon a nation you do not know, and nations who do not know you will run to you. For the Lord your God, even the Holy One of Israel, has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call to him while he is near. And then it goes on from there. Jesus says, come, buy without money. Come and buy wine without money. Look what I have done. I have taken the impure and made it pure, and made it fine wine for all who believe in me, all who are obedient servants. So there's a lot going on in these 12 verses that we can really dig down into if we're obedient servants and we take the time to really study the Gospels and study the Word and think about some of these things that are happening. And as John moves through his Gospel, why are they happening, and why are they happening in the order that John has them? And I've heard some people say, well, you know, some of these things probably out of order, and you know, as we'll go through this, we'll see some things. But no, I think John is very deliberate in his message that he's putting forth. And here, right on the third day, which is the resurrection day to come, we see Jesus performing his first sign. As it says in verse 11, Jesus performed this first sign in Cana of Galilee, and he'll perform another sign shortly in Cana. He displayed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Again, that's a very important message. Jesus did this to show who he was. Not a man in right relationship with the Holy Spirit, but as the Son of God and the Son of Man. Come and buy without money what is freely giving if you just believe. It's a wonderful message for this time when everybody is so confused. And we talked, I think, a couple weeks ago about how people like myself, those of us who are older, grew up as modernists. And the whole goal of 20th century man was to find truth. People were digging for the truth. And now we live in the 21st century, which we call the postmodern era, which there is no truth. Truth is relative. What may be true for you is not true for me. And we just seek whatever makes us happy, or seek what we think might work. And it's left a generation that has really been struggling. But anyway, something to think about, pray about in this time, and we will see you next time as we finish chapter 2 in the Gospel of John. God bless.